Jackson
I
would have
mean,
lied to be there.
Yeah, Jackson would have, and man,
if they would have just parachuted him into Berlin, this war would have been over.
It's done with. It's done with.
Soundstripe.
Another episode of Blockbusters, a classic movie podcast where if you're like us and you miss the days of packed movie theaters and movie stores, and this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Caleb Suggs. Joining me is one of my co-hosts, Dakota Lowry.
What's up, everybody?
And Ernie Ferguson.
The Statue of Liberty is kaput. Oh, that's disconcerting.
What would you do if I said your name first? Would that throw you off?
No, I got my quote ready. I'm ready. I was ready to fire off. I got ankles like an old woman too, so I'm ready to roll.
Look, you can't do it. You do our names in alphabetical order. It's Caleb Suggs, Dakota Lowry, Ernie Ferguson. Okay,
CD.
That's
CD.
why I do it that way.
Paper, rock, scissors. Let's go. Who goes up next?
Yeah, I did not realize I saw names were in alphabetical order.
You put that
to be
deep
fair,
thought into it.
I just recognize it.
I do me because I'm the host, and then I do you, and then I do Ernie last because he always has his quote.
Or you did it in reverse alphabetical of our last names. That's it there too.
You're making me think too hard.
Who's younger, Caleb or Dakota?
He is.
Dakota.
Okay, so never mind. Screw that. That goes out the window. Ages.
Who's older?
That's why I'm last. That wasn't the question. That's a durr. We all know that.
And welcome back this week to another episode of Blockbusters. It is an Ernie pick. Isn't that the best? Aren't those the best episodes?
They are.
This wasn't off the wall though.
He went Blockbuster. Ernie must have been sick last week. Were you feeling a little under the weather?
No, like I said, I knew I'd been picking some obscure ones or not as big ones, and I know
I feel like we skirted around this movie for like 6 months now.
Yeah, and I knew I had
just
one.
Me, but you. I think Dakota's almost picked it as well. I think I've almost picked it.
Yeah, it's been on our list. I think for all of us, this is probably was our number one war movie, if not number two. Somewhere it was somewhere around there. And I wanted to, and I was going to debate about doing it. My next pick, which would have been closer to Memorial Day, but that's also near my daughter's birthday, so I'm going to pick a movie that's close to her liking on that way. So I was like, okay, I want to do this, and why not just continue on with the John Williams theme too, of having a score done by him too. So that's why I picked Saving Private Ryan.
Saving Private Ryan is just it's not. I wouldn't say it was just the number one war movie for us. I would say it's probably the number one war movie ever made, at least arguably. I think. I know there's some out there, but it's arguably up there.
Yes.
You can at least put it that way. But the thing about this movie though is it's not your normal oh yeah, back-to-back World War champs, kind of, I don't want to say propaganda, but that beat your chest, type. I mean, it's a very real movie. I mean, there's a lot of gray areas. There's really I wouldn't say there's no true bad guy in the movie, because you see some atrocities committed on both sides, and it shows you a very grisly picture of war. Yeah,
this ain't Top Gun.
That's a good example. That's a good example.
Well, this movie is usually war movies come into a battle movie or a journey movie, or a mission movie. This Spielberg puts both of these in together, and it's also a beautiful movie. Just like there's two scenes that really come to mind, and they're both group scenes. The first time you see the crew after they got their mission, and they're walking up the hill, and you see Tom Hanks head first. Then you start to see them kind of coming up one by one, and you see them coming up, and you see the scenery around them. That's the one like beautiful cinematic type of part of it. And the other one again is them walking at night, and you just see lightning going off in the background. You see the shadows of the men. It's incredible too. And you also have this movie bookended by the war scenes. I mean, the first 20 minutes of this movie to me is I don't know. It's something that I don't think is replicated in many, if any, other war movies, especially by someone who is as family friendly as you can be for Steven Spielberg. This to me is kind of an out of the ordinary. I mean, yes, you have Jaws, but even Jaws you don't see much. But here, I mean, you have you have a guy holding his own arm. You have bodies flying all over the place. It was just incredible, and so and I'll kind of talk a little bit later about that about this scene too. But it's just an incredible movie altogether. I think
The first time I watched, well, I was gonna say, the first time I watched the movie, I was a teenager. I turned it off after the D-Day scene because I was shaken up by it. Because that's how, I mean it. And even still here, I've seen it a couple times, and I was watching before I've watched it this time. It still shakes me up.
Yeah. Dakota, you watched this in my class, didn't you?
Did we?
I thought I know I got a letter from one parent about watching this movie. It is rated R, but that's why you sent out a list of movies to parents at the beginning of the year saying that we could possibly watch these, and if you don't want your child to watch, just sign it back and bring it back, and I won't. Because the devastation of war is shown in this opening scene, and so I'm sorry I didn't mean to step on your toes there, Dakota. But sometimes a little reality helps.
Oh yeah, I don't, and unless I watched it, and that might be where it's come from because I don't think I've ever sat down in one full sitting and watched this movie, and a lot of that from the house, of course, because my dad is a veteran and has been deployed 2 or 3 different times, and of course his PTSD really wouldn't let him watch this movie, and so that was a big reason why we wouldn't, and I also think my mother thought it might have been a little too gruesome maybe for us as teenagers to watch. So I never really sat down and watched it unless I watched it in your class. And I don't remember watching it, but that's not saying we didn't. Of course, it's been over 10 years ago now. So, but no, I mean, this was like just to kind of echo what y'all said. That this movie was gruesome. This was there were some scenes in it, especially in that when they're storming the Omaha beach, and some of the things that popped up that my eyes got kind of big when I was watching it, and I was like, oh wow, they put that on screen, especially in 1998 but I think it's a good picture for anybody to watch. Don't get me wrong, it is a hard movie to watch, but I think it is an important movie for people to watch, maybe to understand some of the things that veterans and people who are deployed go through. And to kind of, because I think that's one of the things my dad had told me at one time was that this is about as close as you can get to being on a battlefield without actually being on it, about actually seeing those things, and that's rough, and there was a lot of great scenes that we'll get to, and a lot of things that we'll end up talking about later on. But yeah, I'm glad I finally got to sit down and watch this movie after all these years.
Saving Private Ryan is a 1998 American epic war film directed by Steven Spielberg and written by Robert Rodat. Set in 1944 in Normandy, France during World War II, it follows a group of soldiers led by Captain John Miller, played by Tom Hanks, on a mission to locate Private James Francis Ryan, played by Matt Damon, and bring him home safely after his 3 brothers have been killed in action. The cast also includes Edward Burns, Tom Sizemore, and Jeremy Davies. Saving Private Ryan became one of the year's most successful films, earning critical acclaim for its graphic portrayal of combat. World War II veterans described the combat scenes as the most realistic portrayal of their own experiences they had seen. Some said that they had been unable to watch it due to their traumatic memories. The film earned $81.8 million, making it the second highest grossing film in 1998. It went on to win many accolades, including Golden Globe, Academy, BAFTA, and Saturn Awards. Considered one of the greatest films ever made, Saving Private Ryan's battle scene filming techniques impacted many subsequent war, action, and superhero films, and numerous directors have cited Saving Private Ryan as an influence on them. The picture is credited with having a renewed interest in World War II at the turn of the century, inspiring other films, television shows, and video games set during the war. In 2014, the film was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. The film was released July 24th, 1998. As I said, it grossed $481.8 million or $482.3 million. This is right here. The Rotten Tomato score, what is it? 94%?
94, and popcorn's 95.
Okay, yeah. So, and I think, obviously, I know we've talked about the opening scene, and we're going to talk about the opening scene more, but sometimes I feel like, I don't want to say it gets overshadowed by the opening scene, but I think a lot of people remember that. But I think, and you mentioned the closing scene as well, obviously the two bookends of but the real meat of this movie is in the middle, when you just see all the, I mentioned earlier, the gray areas of war, just the things that you do, the things that the soldiers, is it worth risking our lives for one guy? Should we kill this guy who surrendered because, he just killed our guys? Yeah, all these things that you see. So, I mean, and at the same time, these aren't soldiers. I mean, yeah, I'm sure, I know they're fighting for their country, but you just see it in their face. I mean, they just want to go home. These are people that just want to go home. And I have to see them and do all these things that they go through. It's tough. And it shows you a strong picture of what it's like.
Yeah, we as the viewer, we're Oppum, because we're not. He was hadn't touched his gun since basic training, So that's one of those things. We would like to think that we're like Jackson, or something like that. But no, we're Oppum, and you talked in the gray areas are perfectly executed in Oppum. In how he started the movie to how he ended the movie, and then also, I mean, even with Miller and Tom Hanks, his battle as he was going to not lose himself in this war, it just, to tell you, it's not necessarily a happy movie, because we look at who survived. One, you have the smart aleck that survived in Reiben, you had the coward in Oppum, and then you have the not really lovable Private Ryan too, and so you get that, just kind of that mixture there of, not only is war not black and white, but how we feel is not black and white either.
There was two things that really kind of stood out to me throughout this movie, and that I guess have to give kudos to Steven Spielberg about it. The first one that I'm going to mention, I didn't really realize until my buddy pointed out to me, but a lot of even the uniforms and the weapons they're carrying and stuff like that are very historically accurate in that time period. Even like some of the weapons that you see the American soldiers carrying, he pointed out that, hey, that's not an American-made weapon, that's a German-made weapon, or hey, that's a French-made weapon, or whatever it was, and a lot of that stuff is really well done. But the other thing is, and I don't think this gets talked, that we kind of looked at sometimes, is a lot of times we talk about how long movies are and how they drag on. This movie was 2 hours and 50 minutes long or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was engrossed the entire time.
The 3 hour movies, if you do it right.
And I think they did it right. I personally, I was every little conversation that was had, every battle that was taking place, them setting up for things. I was honestly engrossed the entire time, and there wasn't a time that I was sitting there thinking, "Wow, this is kind of dragging on." Like I was all for it.
Yeah, Caleb mentioned the opening scene, just being shaken after it, and this is where Spielberg and the editors were great, because after that, the movie slowed down so you could catch your breath. It wasn't just, it wasn't like, like Goodfellas, which was 90-second scene, 90-second scene, 90-second scene, and it was just click, 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 click. I mean, you had this one. It wasn't in one take, but you had this one huge scene that was 20 plus minutes long, and you needed to pull back. You needed to pull back because you weren't going to make it emotionally. You weren't going to make it, And so again, it was just kind of brilliant storytelling and brilliant editing along with it.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like, they're trying so hard just to get up that hill, and then when they do, it's kind of almost like, it's a time to take our breath, and as viewers, you feel that too, like, oh, we finally made it up this hill. But to go back to what you were saying, Dakota, I'll give you even more example. You look early in the D-Day scene, you see Jackson when he's trying to shoot those people out of that, I don't know what you call it, a foxhole or whatever, when they're behind the sandbags and stuff. Yeah. You see him on close-up. He's got a bruise on his thumbnail because that would happen, I guess, with like they were either putting the bullets in the gun or they were racking the whatever you call it. But I mean,
you were pushing the clip into the gun. If you didn't do it right, and you close it. I don't know if I've ever seen the M1 Garand, but if you close it wrong and don't get your thumb out of the way, you will absolutely bruise your thumb.
Yeah, I mean, it will absolutely. I mean, I don't know if y'all. I mean, there was. I guess because I've seen it a few times now, I pick up on little things. There was one time a medic got shot in the canteen, and
it was bleeding.
You see,
the blood coming out.
And then blood comes out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the little stuff like that.
Even the like sound effects and things. Like every time the clip would that they would empty out of their clip and the clip would go flying out.
Oh,
and
the
little
cling.
Cha-ching, like that's accurate. That is my dad has a couple of M1 Garands, and every time we shoot them and every time they're done, they do that exact same sound, and it's
that's one of the most satisfying sounds.
Oh yeah, it is. I love it.
And then you just hear the cling. I'm like, oh man, I just want to hear it cling over and over and over again.
And the other thing that I really appreciated too was they kind of differentiated in between some of the single action and the high rate of fire, the full auto. And a lot of the weapons that they use, like those M1 Garands, they're not full auto weapons. They're they're single action or not single action, but single. Forgive me, I don't know the exact terminology or don't remember it. But I mean, it's just you pull the trigger once, one bullet flies out, and they held true to that in the movie. Also, did y'all notice that forgive me, I don't remember all their names, but the sniper, Jackson. Okay, he was left-handed.
Yes,
that is so against the norm and everything. And when he would reload, he would reach over his scope and rack the bolt. That's crazy. I noticed that halfway through, and I was like, that's kind of wild, man.
Well, on June 6, 1944, the U.S. Army lands at Omaha Beach as part of the Normandy invasion, incurring major losses against the artillery and machine gun fire of the heavily fortified German forces. Initially dazed by the chaotic battle, 2nd Ranger Battalion Captain John H. Miller takes command of a surviving group and leads a successful infiltration behind German lines to secure victory. So the movie actually opens up with, I think a lot of people don't remember this, but the movie opens up, we get the cemetery scene, which, so is that in Washington? I'm assuming it is.
No, that was in Normandy. That was in Normandy.
Oh, was it Normandy?
No,
that was at Normandy. Yes.
Was this not Arlington Cemetery?
No, it wasn't Arlington.
That's why you see the when it has the French flag, it shows the American flag first, and then it cuts to and then cuts back the French flag. No, this is, I believe, the cemetery somewhere near the Normandy beach.
Okay, I thought it was Arlington.
Something I liked about it is the way they play it. You have the family kind of walking behind him, almost like they can't be a part of this experience for him. Like what he's going through is good. I would be emotional walking through this scene. I didn't have anybody that fought in this, so I can't imagine being there for someone, to see someone that saved your life. But I mean, it's a nice little scene that opens up. But then, of course, we switch very quickly to the actual D-Day scene. And just the emotions you get as they're seeing them in the carrier. You see Tom Hanks's character. You see him with his hands shaking. Like you see the nervousness and the tension that builds. When you hear them start talking, like they're shouting like commands and stuff. but you hear the explosions going off, but before that ramp drops, the tension that builds, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, just the guys that are throwing up, and just and that's one thing I like about the scene too, is that yes, the main focus is on Hanks, but it's not just Hanks. They do a good job of Horvath too, which how Tom Sizemore or Jeremy Davies, who played Oppum, weren't nominated for Best Supporting Actor. We can go into the Academy Awards about how Saving Private Ryan got screwed on the Best Picture and Best Actor too. But you see the focus like on all these different guys, and then like you said, when they drop the door down, and everybody gets mowed down, and I'm just like, I remember seeing that for the first time, going, "Holy cow!"
Yeah, he. I think it was in the movie that he said, "We're going to open the murder chute," and I was like, "Okay, that's kind of a fun way to, maybe boost morale or like, hey, like try to encourage guys or to embolden them." But then they open the murder chute, and then 4 of them immediately fall down and they're throwing them overboard. It was, God, I mean, it was crazy.
You just think about it. I mean, these are highly trained soldiers.
No, they're not.
No, they're not.
No, they're not.
That's the thing.
No,
these guys,
they're trained for. They're American. These are Army Rangers.
They are not all. Not yeah. The Harriet Miller's group, yes, but not a lot of the guys that are coming out of that boat. Not all of them are Rangers.
No, but they're United States trained soldiers. They didn't just draft them and then go stick them on this boat to send them to D-Day.
Yeah, but I mean, you've got to take. They've only went through like 8 weeks of basic training. That's
beside the point. That's not what I'm getting to. Either way, you're trained. These are trained soldiers. They've been trained. However much training they've had, they've still been trained. So you've been trained for certain scenarios. Just imagine like that ramp drops. I mean,
you don't get trained for that.
No, there's no training.
Even the highest trained soldier. I mean, you see it. They're jumping. They can't even get out the front of it. They're having to jump over the side. Which, by the way, this was like the only non-realistic part of the movie when you see the bullets whizzing through the water and actually shooting. Yeah. I mean, because they actually did say that like they could get some reprieve from the bullets just by going underneath the water. So that's like, but I mean, just see. I mean, and then some of them drown, and then you get to the beach and you see something. They're crawling around and they're hiding and they're not even shooting anything. I mean, that's just.
There's so many scenes that stood out to me in this opening part that and I mean, like we said, they come out the gate swinging, with this scene, and you've got the scene with the medic where he has the tweezers down in the guy's chest trying to dig the bullet out. You have the scene where Tom Hanks or Miller is dragging the guy across the beach, and then all of a sudden there's the explosion, and all of a sudden he's only dragging half of a guy. There's the scene where the guy gets shot in the helmet, and then he like takes his helmet off, and then he gets domed again. Like, I mean, there's so many scenes that just.
But the scene he keeps talking to the guy that's on the phone. He keeps grabbing him, and the third time he grabs him, he doesn't have a face.
Oh, he got the hole in his face. You're like,
yeah,
oh, hello.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we're like 10, 15 minutes in, and then Tom Hanks is like, "All right, let's get in this war." Like
I was like, y'all already are in this war.
Well, I mean, that's the thing.
Like the feeling, like we finally got a foothold. Let's actually like do something. Like,
yeah, they just had to get onto the beach. They had to get up there and get. I mean, they were trying to get to the rendezvous point, and I think that's even one of the things he said. Like, he's out here yelling for the sergeant, and they're like, he's like, "Where's the sergeant at? Who's in charge here? You are." And even when he asked where the rendezvous point was, he's like, wherever we can get to, wherever we can get, and that was this whole scene, man, was just, oh man. And even when they get up there and it's like they said, when they threw the grenades into the bunker and then they took the flamethrower in there and just torched the place and the guys were falling out of the front and they're like, hey, don't waste the ammo.
Let them burn.
let them burn. Like even and like I said, even the scenes, those questionable decisions that they had to make. That was one of the things Kamei asked with the prisoners was why weren't they letting the prisoners go?
Well,
Like
that's
they
what
like they
you get the
you
gray
know
area right there. I mean, from the
yeah
start, because here they are. I mean, they're supposed rules of war. You're supposed if they surrender, you're supposed to take them as POW, but they just shoot them. And think about what they just went through. I mean, they literally just saw tons of their comrades being
hmm
mowed down like it was nothing. I mean,
yep
imagine what you're feeling in that moment. I mean, you can't. When you see these people, there has to be a sense of, I guess, basically hatred there. I
oh
mean,
yeah
This goes back to the reveal we'll get later on, where Miller and Tom Hanks talks about losing his humanity. Just because there's that one scene in this opening scene where the Germans are coming out in like one of these little tunnel or little dugout tunnels, and they're dead. They've been shot, and and all the Americans are unloading their clips on these guys that are already dead, and Horvath was the one he was saying stop stop firing, because they were going to, like Ron White said, I don't know how many they were going to use to kick my butt, but I know how many I don't know how many it takes to kick my butt, but I know how many they're going to use, and these guys are going to use all their bullets
hmm
on that, and you saw there were some that surrendered and they got shot, but yet there were they did take some prisoners too. So again, you have that wide range of gray area of, just we're going to dump as much lead as we can into it. I don't care if your hands are up, we're going to shoot you, but yes, but we do take some prisoners. And it's just, and that's the one thing, war turns people differently. People react differently in those situations.
I
yeah, I mean,
remember
no,
I
go ahead.
remember the scene with the medic. And I mean, it's you talking about like those frustrating situations where, like,
Mm,
where you're just sitting there and the medic is trying to work on somebody, and then he just loses it because the guy
just give us a
dies.
chance.
Yeah, just give us a chance. And it's like
Yeah.
like we're talking about that those moments that drive into that gray area, those moments where you're not thinking about rules of war, you're not thinking about prisoners, you're not thinking about those moments. And it's like I think Kamei asked that question why they don't take prisoners. It's like my buddy said, if you already have a U.S. government that's not really able to feed you at that moment, why are you going to take a prisoner who they're not going to be able to feed either? Already taking your limited rations and then having to spread it among more people.
And that's probably the one character that wasn't gray was Wade. Wade was not, the medic was not gray. He was saving life. He was trying to do everything he could to save lives. A true person of medicine and medical senses, where everybody else had different shades of gray. Wade didn't. He didn't want to waste anybody. He didn't prisoners or anything like that. He wasn't going to be like that. So he was the one person of that group that I don't think there was a shade of gray in.
Mm-hmm.
The United States Department of War receives communication that 3 of 4 Ryan brothers have been killed in action. Last, James Francis Ryan of the 101st Airborne Division is listed as missing. General George C. Marshall orders that Ryan be found and sent home to spare his family the loss of all its sons. Miller is tasked with recovering Ryan and assembles a detachment of soldiers to accompany him. Mike Horvath, Richard Ryben, Adrian Caparzo, Stanley Mellis, Daniel Jackson, medic Irwin Wade, and interpreter Timothy Upham, who lacks any combat experience.
Yeah, I liked when he was trying. He was telling Oppen or Miller was telling, oh, take your time. He was fumbling all over the place. Couldn't figure out what he.
I thought so. He told him. He said, "You're going to need that helmet." I'm like, is he? Because from what I've heard,
doesn't. He hardly wears it at all.
Well, from what I've heard, those World War II helmets really weren't that helpful. I mean, I guess
it's just a piece of tin over your head.
I guess it's a little something, but yeah, it's just like a PI. Like it really wouldn't stop anything.
I think it's more for shrapnel than bullets.
I don't
probably. But that was a good kind of introduction, a little bit to the differences between the higher up brass. You see Miller's out there getting his orders, the first orders, or he was reporting to that one general. And you see they had these sandwiches, they had hot coffee, they had relaxing places to sit, and he was just looking at it, just going, oh man. And then again, we get Optima 2, which they just I thought it was funny with when Hanks just hands him the pencil, which he ends up using throughout instead of because he was going to bring his typewriter with him.
Me? No, my favorite part was when he said, "Is that a souvenir?" Because he had a German helmet instead of United States helmet.
One scene that we of the kind of the end of the battle scene is whenever I think it was Caparzo got the Hitler Youth knife off the German soldier and gave it to Mellish, the German soldier, and you just see Mellish just absolutely break down crying, and that's just which, if I'm not mistaken, is the knife that he got killed with at the end of the movie. Because it was Mellish's knife that he had with him. So it was either the bayonet or that Hitler Youth knife. If it was the Hitler Youth knife, that's even tougher that scene.
I didn't catch that.
I don't remember.
I tell you, I know we talked about that. This scene kind of gives you a breather from such the opening part. But really, I think this scene I think more impacted me like here at home where I was, because the scene with all the typewriters and all the women in the room typing up these letters, and I mean essentially just typing the exact same letter over and over again, just putting a different name and a different date. That scene hit hard to me because I think it really showed how high the death toll was, how high the death count was during this time frame, during this period, and I mean even just on this one beach here, you've probably seen well over several hundred people die in this one scene, and I mean it's not fun, being that family member, being the person on the receiving end of those letters, which thank God I never was, but there's always that fear there. Like when your loved one's there, that one day you're just either going to get a phone call, you're going to get a letter, you're going to get that American flag, and I think that was what the hard part for that scene was for me, was remembering when I was that age and Daddy was deployed, and all of that coming home, and seeing that, and part of me does kind of sympathize, with these people saying, hey, this woman's lost 3 kids. I can understand the U.S. military wanting to bring that last one home so she doesn't suffer as much. But it's just it was heavy in a different way. But it was still a pretty hard scene for me to watch.
Throughout the whole entire movie, everybody but Miller's group understood the mission. They all understood the mission. Like Tom, guy from Cheers, I can't remember his name now.
Tom. If you hadn't said it.
Yeah, I know. If I wouldn't have said it, I can say Sam Malone. I know is his name.
Ted Danson.
Ted Danson. Thank you, Ted Danson. He said he understood. Said he needed to get him home, and it was like kind of epiphany to Tom Hanks, because he was in the same mindset of the rest of his crew. This is my mission. I don't think it's a good mission, but I understand it. And you see that all the way through. I mean, and that all starts all the way from the beginning, from the typewriter scene, also followed by the mom coming outside as the car parks, and she just kind of collapses to the ground, and you're like, man, you see the flag that has the 4 stars on the door, and knowing that 3 of those stars are gone, it's just, that's one of those heart-wrenching type of things, which again, that goes back to, you're still dealing in emotions. You had shock in the first 20 minutes, but now you're dealing with the sorrow of the losses, and it really kind of hits. I mean, it really hits on the emotional. It tugs on the emotions there.
Which I can understand where these soldiers are coming from too. Like in their mind, Ryan's not the only one with a family at home. And yes, he's lost 3 brothers. Yes, like that's tragic, and they get it. But in their mind, they have mom and dads at home. Just like Miller's talked about, he has a wife at home. Like they have their family members at home too. What makes this one guy so special that we have to, risk all 8 of our lives to come out here and to get him just so he can go home to save his mom, when our parents are going through the exact same thing at this very moment? You know,
which then it leads perfectly when they start leaving, and you have Ryben complaining, and then you get Jackson. Jackson starts talking about how this is, it's wasting it's a serious miscalculation of valuable resources. He's a fine instrument of warfare. Put me a mile within Adolf Hitler and pack your bags, fellas. War's over. Amen. I was
and
like,
then Miller's comment, hey, you see, this is how we're supposed to complain. If you want to complain, do it like this guy.
But again, that also sets up the whole entire thing. It shows you Ryben's going to question everything that's going on the whole entire time. He's going to be a pain in the rear to everybody, but that's just kind of his character. Jackson is, hey, I got this gift. Let's go. Let me use it. That you really kind of see that kind of play out because Jackson's almost like a machine.
Well, the group tracks Ryan to the town of Neuville-aux-Plaines, where Caparzo is killed by a German sniper while trying to rescue a young girl. Warning their friend, the men grow resentful at being forced to risk their lives for one man. They later find James Frederick Ryan, but realize he is the wrong man with a similar name. That evening, the men rest in a chapel where Miller tells Horvath that his hands began uncontrollably shaking after he joined the war. The men travel to a rallying point where the 101st Airborne might be after landing off course, where they find scores of wounded and displaced soldiers. Wade admonishes Ryben, Mellis, and Jackson for callously searching through a pile of deceased soldiers' dog tags in front of passing troops, hoping to find Ryan's among them and conclude their mission. Remorseful for ignoring their behavior, Miller shouts for anyone who knows Ryan. One deafened soldier tells him that Ryan was reassigned to defend the final bridge in the town of Ramel. Yeah, so we get to the town, where it's raining and everything, and again, this is, you get the whole scene with Caparzo. I understand. You just can't be taking kids. But again, it's just, he's talking about, it's not, he said it's the right thing to do, but yeah, it may be the right thing to do, but it's just not what you can do. And again, another just tough decision that these soldiers have to make.
Yeah, because you're looking at, you have a family that has no way to protect themselves. They have all these kids, and again, he's looking at it like his niece, but you can't do anything. And that's where you get the really first shot of Miller getting mad, and that's why we don't pick up kids, and everybody else was telling them, don't do it type of thing. Because right before this, again, they showed, I think, where a runner got sniped, and the sniper hit him a couple more times, and they were explaining, that they still have breath in them, they can still get the notes out, and just the tragic scene, also the tragic part of the Caparzo death, whatever, is the letter. Talking about the letter, somebody take the letter, which again gets passed on to Wade, to Miller, and then to Ryben, throughout the movie. So that was one of those, again, crushing things about this. Somebody that wants to try to do right, and it ends up costing them.
And then also the family. Talk about how bad things have to be for that you would trust to send your kid with a complete, not just stranger, but army of a whole nother country. You don't even know if you did send your kid with them, you don't even know if you would ever see them again. But at least in your mind, she would be safe. That's tough.
Well, you see, it's kind of like if you've heard all the stories, like during the Great Depression, how people sold their kids to different families, not like trafficking, selling them, but selling them just so the kid has a chance to survive. The dad didn't think. The dad, I think, was the only one that didn't think that they would survive. Again, that was funny when she slapped him and a couple of times afterwards, But as a parent, you can kind of think, if one of my kids can survive somehow, I got to try to figure out how to do that.
But to the flip side of this, and I'm wrong, I know this is a hard scene to watch, but this also shows Jackson's skill. Look, the likelihood, the likelihood of that shot to nail somebody through the scope and through their eyeball, look, not very high. really, really cool shot though.
Don't
really
you
cool
dare
scene.
besmirch Jackson's ability here on this
No.
podcast.
Oh no, I'm not besmirching it. I have no doubt he could have done it.
Of war.
I mean, don't get me wrong, he was highly skilled.
Hitler, that war would have been over.
That's why he said that about Hitler.
Yep.
Exactly.
And
But, you know-
don't get me wrong, I'm not doubting his skill, but I was this scene really set that precedent for his skill.
I liked you had the thunder lightning type of interaction between the two American units, and you had Paul Giamatti's part, where he's just complaining the whole entire time about his ankles hurting and things of that nature, and they finally get to play. Then they get that one place where he sits down and he knocks the wall down, and there's just Germans sitting there, and it's that Mexican standoff. Put your guns down. No, they're just yelling at each other. All of a sudden, I'm still trying to figure out how somebody didn't pull a trigger that whole entire time. I mean, it's one of those things you would think all of a sudden I see something that's not us, I'd be shooting, and then again, Ted Danson's crew comes in and wipes the floor with the Germans. Cause again, there's not a bad group of people than Nazis. So if you're going to have a movie and you want to have some bad people, just make them Nazis, because then everybody and their grandmother will be like, "Yeah, let's kill them. That's good."
Yeah.
The town-to-town warfare, though. I mean, I think when you think about World War II, you think about the stuff like D-Day and the bit, but like the town-to-town warfare, where literally you have American troops sitting on one side of a wall, and you knock down a wall, and there's a whole German on this side of the wall. I mean, it makes me think. I can't imagine what something like Stalingrad was, where it was literally like that. Just oof.
Well, if you want to go into history class, this is
we ain't got this much time.
No, but this is the big difference between World War I and World War II, because World War I was mainly fought in open fields. World War II is when war truly changed, where civilians were targets, cities were targets. Because you talk about the bombing of Dresden, the bombing of London, Nagasaki, Hiroshima, places like that. I mean, civilians weren't supposed to be touched during war, but now in World War II, we were going in towns, we were using people, all that kind of stuff. And this is really where you see warfare truly change its face right here.
So for a little bit of comedic relief in this moment, when they finally get to James Ryan, okay, and you see the hope on everybody's faces. Okay, well, at this point, Kamei says, "Hey, that guy looks familiar. So who's playing James Ryan?" Of course, I'm sold that this is the James Ryan. Okay, so I look over and say, "Oh, well, that's Matt Damon." Well, this made us pause the movie for about 10 minutes.
You thought
Matt
that was
Damon.
Matt Damon?
You don't know what Matt Damon looks like?
Well, I didn't know what a young Matt Damon looked like. No, and this took
son.
Yeah, this caused us to pause the movie and have a 10-minute argument over whether or not this was Matt Damon or not. Kamei was right. Kamei was right.
That was a young Nathan Fillion.
Yeah,
but that whole entire part, though. No, they're in grade school. Are you sure they're still alive? Yes, I think they're still alive. Just
my favorite part was as they're walking off, you can still kind of hear in the background. He's like, "I need to go home." Like,
yeah,
like,
a little late for that,
like
buddy.
He's gonna use it like, "Hey, I had a chance to go home now. I think I still need to go home just to double check."
Which, I mean, I can understand him freaking out, I mean, somebody walks up to you on the battlefield and says, "Hey, are you James Ryan?" "Yeah, your entire family's dead, dude. You're going home." And then all of a sudden you're not. You get that little bit of, you get that like that devastation, and then you get that little bit of hope. Like,
which again, that was a part that was needed also. Just it wasn't a lot of humor, but it was enough humor to kind of ease the tension after Caparzo's death, and then, but then you see the kind of the hope of the men, and then you see the despair. Then that gets doubled down in the next scene when they find the downed glider, and you see all these injured men, and they start counting the dog tags in front of everybody. And they get really callous about it. Even Miller gets callous about the kind of, because he's kind of smiling as Mellish and Ryben and Jackson are kind of joking about it. And this is where you get our moral compass. You get Wade coming back in and just kind of snapping them to reality, which, guys, I don't know how Tom Hanks didn't. I know why he didn't win an Academy Award, because he won 2 in the previous 6 years. But then when he after that little crack of smile, whenever the guys were making fun of him, and then he just turns and he starts asking about Sergeant or Private Ryan, are you Private Ryan? And just kind of goes like that. I was like, man, that's a master class in acting, I thought, for that part.
But then again, you get the comedic relief when he comes up to the dude and he can't hear and yelling at him. Oh my goodness, man! I can't even remember what he said now.
It's Bertier.
Yeah, he just said it really loud. Is what he said.
Yeah,
it's Bertier from Remember the Titans. There's so many like I don't want to say there's, but
it sure is, isn't it?
There's so many. So many people, every time you see a new person, is like, I know, like they may not always be like the biggest names, but like you recognize every single person that come up.
To be fair, I didn't realize Vin Diesel was Caparzo until he was, laying there bleeding out. But
y'all know who Bryan Cranston is, right?
Yes, I know who Bryan Cranston.
Yeah, he was the guy, one-armed officer in the typing pool area that they first brought to him. I was like, I saw him. You talk about a young guy. I was like, that's Bryan Cranston. He's not supposed to be. Like in something like this. But yeah, it's just you see these random dudes. Like even the pilot from the glider. I don't know who he was, but I've seen him in stuff. I've seen him in a lot of stuff. I can't picture him, but I've seen him in stuff. And I'm like, you just got. Again, it's a Steven Spielberg movie, so you're going to be able to pull people left and right and put them in a movie like this.
Well, on the way to Rommel, Miller decides to neutralize a German gun nest they discovered against the advice of his men, and although they are successful, Wade is killed. The men prepare to execute a surrendered German soldier in revenge, but Upham intervenes, arguing that they should follow the rules of war. Miller releases the soldier nicknamed Steamboat Willie, ordering that he surrender to the next Allied patrol. Discontented with the mission, Ryben threatens to desert, leading to a standoff between the men that Miller defuses by revealing his civilian background as a teacher and baseball coach, which he had always refused to disclose. Miller muses that people often guessed his career before he became a soldier, while his men could not, implying that war has changed him, and worries whether he is still the man he was and whether his wife will recognize him. So I think this is kind of like the turning point part. I don't want to say turning point part of the movie, but there's a lot of, we've talked about the gray areas, the decisions they have to face. There's a lot in this scene. It starts with the machine gun nest where you get the soldiers, they're like, they don't want to do this, obviously because it's dangerous and that's not their mission, and, but at the same time, you have Miller, the captain, who's like, well, if we don't do it, they'll ambush, more of our soldiers. And again, so it's like, okay, would we risk our lives to do that? I mean, that's a tough decision to make. And then you get the whole thing with the German soldier, which is a big part of it too. And decisions, again, they're just tough to make.
And I like the when they make the run at the machine gun nest, that it's coming from Oppen's point of view. You just see them running up the hill, and he's in that sniper. He's got the sniper scope, and he's just kind of watching. So you don't know exactly what's going on, until the firing stops, and he brings down the scope, and then all these different orders are for him, and having to run through the cloud of smoke, and then he gets there, and that's one of those things. Watching it again, I kind of noticed it this time is, as they're working on Wade, that's when I saw that Ryben. I ended up seeing him only because I knew Ryben was doing something. I never noticed it before, but you see him in the background. Ryben's walking away because he's going to go check. He's checking for people, And I was like, oh, okay, he's going to be the one that finds Steamboat Willie.
Well, before that, I like when it comes to that smoke, you see them working on someone on the ground, and there's almost like that feeling like, someone's been shot. Who is it? And then you come and find out it's Wade. But I mean, even then, it's like the suspense of like, who, because it's this tough. I mean, you pretty much know going into this movie that basically just about all these soldiers are gonna, at least most of them are gonna bite it one by one. So it's tough to have to watch that.
Well, they said that we should have known who was going to die because we skipped over this one of the most crucial scenes was the chapel scene or the church scene, you
Oh,
know, and Wade's talking about sleeping when his mom came home or pretending to sleep when he, because I think we've all done that as kids, you know, just our parents have come home and, you know, they're probably looking at us. So we're going to pretend like we sleep because we don't necessarily want to talk or anything like that. I mean, that whole entire chapel scene, I hate to go backwards, but I just realized we didn't talk about it, is, but you have the buildup of Miller, and we find out that there's a wager, you know, a pool about what he did and where he came from, you know, and just the little talking that he and Horath had with each other, and then just the story times between the other guys, just to see again Album coming in as an outsider, just listening to him talk. And them all looking at Jackson, who's racked out, and none of them can sleep, and he's racked out because he has a clear conscience. You know, that was, to me, that was a very beautiful scene to really be in the smack dab middle of this movie, because it is needed for what we're talking about right now. You know, because you get all this, the wager, the humanity coming in this part.
Yeah, it's a good reminder of where they were, and then thinking about like, because and then that's what was it with this scene, or was it? Well, I think it's a later scene when Miller was actually, they find the real James Ryan, and they're talking to him, and he said like, I can't even remember what my brother's faces look like. You know, and he's talking about like, you don't try to remember their face, you try to remember something they were involved in.
Yeah.
And you know, that's what they're talking about here in that way, to thinking back to, you know, all those opportunities that they had, and then they're realizing at this moment that, oh, like, there's a good chance that I'm not going to see that again. There's a good chance that I'm not going to have that opportunity again. And then you kind of flash forward back to where we were at a minute ago, where they're sitting here working on Wade. I didn't realize this until my friend pointed out for me, but every soldier carries their own med pack. And so when they're giving him the morphine, it's not the fact that they're pulling extra from his med pack and giving it to him. It's that they're pulling it from their own med packs and giving it to him. You know, and so that's that kind of that little bit of that humanity where they're like, they know he's going to die. They know he's not going to make it, but they're still giving him that, you know, that medicine, that painkiller to relieve it. And I think that's part of what softens them up and softens Miller in leading into the whole, like, hey, he killed one of our friends. He's killed all, you know, all these people. Like, do we release him or do we not? And Miller is just like, you know, like, let him go. Turn yourself in at the next time, you know. And then you also get the argument at the end between everybody, where Ryman is, you know, just done with it. I just said they said he didn't want anything to do with it, and I love the fact that Miller just stayed calm through this entire thing. That he didn't, even when Robin was sitting there just blatantly disrespecting him and blatantly disrespecting his decisions and everything that he did, that he didn't blow up. He didn't get in his face. He didn't, you know, go and say anything to him. He just sat there and listened to it and let it get to a boiling point until eventually he was, what was that wager up against? And everybody's kind of like expecting him to go rock this guy's world, and they're like, what? You know, what's going on here? And I think that shows a little bit of why Miller is in this position, is because not only does he know how to be a tactician on the battlefield, but he also knows how to lead and diffuse situations like this.
Yeah, he's like that throughout the whole movie. I mean, even all the way back to the D-Day scene, you see that part where he's kind of dazed, you know, has blood on his face and is kind of looking around. And then, you know, he's kind of looking at all the carnage and everything that's happening. And then he just kind of, I don't say calmly, because obviously they're in the heat of battle, but as calmly, I think, as you can be in that situation, he just, you know, starts giving out orders like, hey, we need to get, you know, here, get out of the way, you know, we start moving, you know. So that's just kind of his character. He does a great job with it, too.
One of the little things that I like about the scene is Horvath, when he's the one that's given the morphine and they decide to give that last one, he puts it in Wade's leg and you just see him, he in disgust, he just tosses the morphine needle away, because he knows I'm the one that killed him. So, but I know this is best. It's just the frustration, which then permeates itself in that argument with him and Ryben too. It's just, but then but this is the scene again. How Tom Hanks didn't get the Academy Award when he starts talking about, that he taught grammar and all this other kind of stuff, and just starts going on and on and on and on. You're just like, oh man, this gets me closer to home, which kind of goes back to the two other guys up for this Miller role were Harrison Ford and Mel Gibson. Both of them, I like both of those actors, along with Hanks. But I don't think that they could have done this scene. Mel Gibson maybe.
I think Mel Gibson maybe, but not. I don't know about Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford's too gruff and too grumpy. He could have done the beginning of the movie where being grumpy, stuff like that. But the emotional scene here, which I don't think Mel Gibson could have done the big opening scene, and that just to me shows me right there, like Hanks is a great actor.
Yeah.
Done on that. When Rommel Miller's detachment finds Ryan and informs him of their mission, but Ryan refuses to abandon his post or his fellow soldiers, believing he does not deserve to go home more than anyone else. Horvath convinces Miller that saving Ryan might be the only truly decent thing they can accomplish during the war. Miller takes command of Ryan's group as the only officer present and prepares the soldiers for a German assault. Jackson and Horvath are killed, and Upham stands paralyzed with fear as Mellish is stabbed to death. Steamboat Willie returns and shoots Miller before reinforcements arrive to defeat the Germans. Upham confronts Willie, who attempts to surrender again and kills him before sending the other surrendering Germans away. Upham and Ryben observe as they mortally wounded Miller tells Ryan to earn the sacrifices made to send him.
Is Ryan? I didn't care if Ryan got saved. I didn't like, and I think they portrayed it. I think that this is the way they wanted him to portray the character, but just the way he acted, I can understand the way he acted. But then the story he tells about his brothers and the girl falling from the ugly tree and stuff like that, because you can see Miller just kind of he's got the fake smile instead of laughing at the story. He just kind of, it's like, even Matt Damon's good at that type of character, kind of like in Good Will Hunting. He wasn't the greatest person in the world, but yet he's kind of someone that you had to kind of pull for. And I was just like, man, Private Ryan was not my most enjoyable person.
Yeah, but to me, it gets overshadowed by the fact that I absolutely cannot stand Upham. And
I agree, but I would like to think I wouldn't turn into Upham in a situation like that.
No, I get it. I understand what you're about to say. I get it, but still, it's just hard to like a character when you sit there and listening to your fellow soldier be killed, and you're just kind of standing there on the stairwell.
And so that's okay. So this is where we get the true 180 of the movie. When he shoots the guy that surrendered at the end, because throughout the movie, he was as close to Wade as we got, as far as being morally good. But he was frozen through this whole entire battle, and so that's where it went from morally good to now is he morally questionable? Yes, he shot the one guy, but he let the other guys go. So, Upham is a character that, I don't think anybody rooted for. I don't think anybody rooted for Upham because, again, he just ran around like a chicken with his head cut off. And again, listening to Mellish get killed or listen to the fight up there, and then as the other guy just walks down, that should tell you something right there. When the German guy walks down the stairs and just kind of looks at him and then walks on by him, it's just like, golly, you're not even worth killing. They don't think.
Yeah, and of course we could sit here and gripe on Upham or however you say his name, forever. And don't get me wrong, he wasn't my favorite character. He did annoy me. As And then I think it is fair to mention that the guy did give a fair warning and said that, he hadn't picked up a rifle since basic training, and there's no telling how long it had been since, basic training, which, to be fair, in World War II, weren't a lot of people lying about their age so they could be drafted?
Yeah.
So
but he was a translator. That was his job, was translator, not I'm going to fight you.
So, I mean, I think it could go to show that he didn't really want to be there in the first place, which I don't really think any of them wanted to be.
I was going to say, to be
at
fair,
this
I don't
point.
think anybody wanted to be, no.
Let me say, I don't think he was one who was lying about his age to be there,
Jackson would have lied to be there.
Yeah. Jackson would have, and man,
if they would have just parachuted him into Berlin, this war would have been
it's done with. So, but we have this scene in. Oh, go ahead, Dakota. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. I'm gonna tell you, I really like Jackson's death, though. When he's up there and he's just taking them out left and right, and looking down the scope, and then he's just like, "Get down, Parker," and then I was sad to see it, but I think it was a great way to end his character.
Yeah, I think we're trying to look at this as like the actual like realistic, the war part of it and stuff like that. But as a movie watching experience, the two squad members that survived are like the least likable squad members.
Oh yeah,
100%.
Oh yeah,
and that's annoying.
And Ryan too, because Ryan wasn't likable either.
Yeah, but if Ryan, I didn't think Ryan was that unlikable. I mean,
I understand why he's staying. To be fair, I get it.
I understand that. Yeah,
I understand. I think it's like you said, the character. I mean, at that point, we're having to see these soldiers that we've, for the last 2.5 hours, we've become, attached to, and now we're seeing them die one by one for this guy, and then we finally find this guy, and he's not wanting to come. Obviously, I think that it irks you a little bit, but at the same time, I mean, I understand his reasoning to it, and he even says it, I'm sorry for, I don't know exactly what he says, but basically says, I'm sorry for your sacrifice, but I mean, I'm not going to abandon my, my brothers. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't find Ryan that unlikable.
I'll tell you, the other funny part, a kind of funny part, it was Horvath, and at the very end, where he and that one German face off, neither one of them had ammo. They both chuck their helmets at each other, and just kind of go out like that. And his death hurt me too, because he was one of my favorite characters. Now, again, I thought Tom Sizemore did a great job, and they tried to save him, and it was just kind of rough to watch that death too. But so we have two major battle scenes, but filmed in different ways, because the first battle scene of Normandy seemed almost like a documentary type of thing. The blood on the lenses, the water on the lenses, that type of stuff, just the grainy look, and sometimes the slow motion. This was cinema. This was an adventure cinematic experience, just the way the different camera angles and things like that. It was incredibly fantastic just to watch, just the different parts of it. The tension mount up as the first carrier went past the bottleneck. The tank stops, goes back, and then comes down there. The sticky bombs, Melch's death. Oh, that's still that death was the one that really kind of got me, just because the slow push of the knife and the guy basically tell him to accept it, go faster, and while the other guy who got shot in the throat was sitting there dying out while they were fighting each other too, and you
can hear him. Yes. And I'm telling you that I think that's the one thing that might have bothered me the most, is you didn't get over dramatic deaths. When people died, it genuinely sounded like they were dying. It genuinely sounded like that dude had a hole in his throat and was choking on his own blood. Like and don't get me wrong, and I hate to say this, like, as a viewer, you almost get a little callous, because I mean you're 2.5 hours into this movie, and so, but man, even stopping and think about some of these scenes, you have the guy with the sticky bomb running up to the tank to put it on it, and he just gets misted. And I mean, there's nothing left of this guy, and I mean, there's just like a ton of stuff that you see like that, and then the scene that I think it gets a little looked over because you're so used to it at this point. But this is still just as gory and just as rough as the opening scene was. But to kind of, I think, also bounce off what you were saying, Ferg, was storming the beach. That's something that happened. That's a documentary, and anytime you make a war movie, if you don't stay at mostly close to historically accurate, you're going to have people get mad. But this scene that you have here, to my knowledge, isn't really a thing that took place historically. So they were able to take a little bit more liberty in what happened and build more of the adventure and dramatize it.
Sure.
Leading up to it. I also really like Tom Hanks sitting on the bridge at the end with a 1911 just shooting at the tank. Like, you're going to do anything at all, but
Well, the kickback he had he had no energy whatsoever, and he shot, and you see the gun kind of kick back every time. The recoil was just, that was fantastic too.
Yeah.
Well, decades later, an elderly Ryan and his family visit Miller's grave at the Normandy Cemetery. Ryan expresses that he remembers Miller's words every day, lived his life the best he could, and hopes he has earned their sacrifices. So obviously, I think it's supposed to be intended as the big reveal. At the beginning, you think that maybe this is Tom Hanks' character, and then it's kind of revealed that it's Ryan, it's Matt Damon's character. What, Ernie?
You're going in and out, or your voice is a little bit.
Sorry. Well, I was just saying you get the reveal where it's not Tom Hanks, but it's Matt Damon's character.
That was a pretty good swerve right there.
Yeah.
I thought.
And also, I think the scene, and like I said, this scene is just as heavy, I think, to me, as a lot of the other scenes were, because you have him sitting here and you have his family back there in the background. I don't know if y'all really paid attention to it, but you can look at his family in the background that are kind of looking at him like almost like impatiently. Like, would you just kind of hurry up? Like, we're in another country, we're in a cemetery. We just, look at whatever it is that you're looking at and then come on, But then when his wife walks up to him and just says, "Hey, like, are you okay?" And he asks the question, like, "Have I been a good man? Like, have I been a good person?" And I think that kind of goes to show that, there's a lot of the stuff that these men went through and a lot of the things that took place that they're not able to talk about with their family members and not able to share with their family members, and that. And that's hard on not only just the soldier, but on their family, because the family sees the soldier hurting and knows that they're going through something, but knows that can't help. And then the soldier sees that he's hurting his family, but doesn't really, know how to fix that. And I think this scene does a good job of showing that even, 50 years later, however long later it was after this, that he's still struggling with that and still thinking about those words every day. And, just the weight that he's carried his entire life over the fact that these, 6 of these 8 men have came out here and died and didn't get to go back to see their family, just so the fact that I was able to live and to be able to earn that, to be able to earn their sacrifice,
Which kind of what you talked about, like not being able to talk about war. Like when his wife was asking, when she read Miller's name, it's almost like she didn't know who he was, which is crazy for us to think about as non-combatants sitting there not talking about a guy who saved your life. But one of the things when researching this, they talked about having some World War II vets come in and watch the movie, and how after the invasion scene, there was breakdowns from them, like PTSD kind of setting in. So, because people always talk about Vietnam and PTSD, but they don't really talk about like Korean and World War II, But I mean, my goodness, this was a movie that we saw, and all 3 of us, just from the opening scenes, were like, "Good Lord," Can't imagine, like, from the get go, from real life, going through stuff like that, and then being able to function. I mean,
Yeah.
I accidentally watched The Exorcist at 8 years old, and I still can't function with scary movies since then.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the movie. Do you guys got anything you want to add before we move on to the rankings?
This is another prime example, and I know I said it before. The Academy Awards is bogus because just looking at the movies that were nominated, you know, not having Truman Show, not having Out of Sight, and then Shakespeare in Love wins over this, man. Like Tom Jackson would say on NFL primetime, "Come on, man." That's just.
All right. Well, I guess let's move on to our rankings. I know Tony's pick, but I'll go first. As I said, I think this is, well, in my opinion, I think it's the best war movie, but I think it's arguably the best no matter who you ask. I feel like if you ask anybody, it's going to be at least in their top 3 or top 5. I mean, it's a beautiful movie. It's tough to watch, but not in a bad way. Not in a tough to watch like Lost in America was tough to watch. But it's tough to watch because I mean it paints such a realistic picture of what these people went through, and it's I have the utmost respect in the world for the people that serve in our military, and to have to know that there were people that had to actually go through that. I mean, the stuff that you see in this, literally, to me, it's like stuff you would see in a movie. Like, it's not real. This couldn't have possibly happened. So to know that they did, and Steven Spielberg just paints an excellent picture. He does a fantastic job. The acting is great, as you mentioned. Tom Hanks does a fantastic job. The story is great. As Dakota said, it's an almost 3-hour movie, but you're perfectly engaged every inch of the way. So I don't think there's enough good things to say about it, so I'm not going to go on and on, but I'll give it a 9.5.
For me, just looking at this, you have a director and an actor that are throwing 100 miles an hour in their in what they're at this time period, because from 92 to 98, Hanks made League of Their Own, Sleepless in Seattle, Philadelphia, which he won an Academy Award, Forrest Gump, he won an Academy Award, Apollo 13, Toy Story, That Thing You Do, which he also directed, and then Saving Private Ryan. Well, then you have Spielberg, Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, which is he won an Academy Award, Jurassic Park: The Lost World, Amistad, and Saving Private Ryan. So you have two guys at the height of their power, and also at a time period when World War II was really, really focused on. Tom Brokaw had The Lost Generation. You had Stephen Ambrose that wrote the book, The Band of Brothers, which turned into that HBO series called Band of Brothers. And also the other movie that was nominated this year for an Academy Award was A Thin Red Line, which was a movie about the Pacific Theater. So this was just kind of a combination time to really kind of like focus in on World War II this time. The
Thin Red Line, though, I mean, it's a long movie too. It's still good, but it's
not the same.
It's not the same. It's
No.
actually kind of tough to get through at times.
Yes.
For the wrong reasons.
Yes, I agree. It is long and it's hard to get through. It was. I agree with that. You have Hanks, and I've already told you how he won for Forrest Gump and didn't win for this. I don't know. But to me, Tom Sizemore was fantastic. Jeremy Davies, even as Oppum, was good too, because he did his job of making us not like him. And I liked Edward Burns and Ryben too. Not to mention Barry Pepper too as Jackson. So that whole entire secondary crew was great. For me, I'm going to give this a 9.75.
I mean, it's kind of hard not to echo some of the things that y'all said. I mean, the cast in this entire movie was great. I mean, like you said, I don't really think that there was any character or any actor that I thought was just kind of lacking in this film. That I thought that maybe they could have given a little bit more. And I mean, it really is saying something when you could take a film this long and keep an audience engaged for as long as you could, as long as I did, and not even realize that you've been watching the movie for as long as you have. And then not only that, just being able to kind of bring that realism into it, and allow you to be able to get attached to the characters, to allow you to be able to, kind of feel for them in the situation that they're in and that they're going through, and to build that. And then when these characters die on screen, that you kind of feel those deaths a little bit, yourself, and feeling that weight, but to be able to balance the heaviness of it with those moments of comedic relief, with those moments where it's not just constant doom and gloom. It's not just constantly depressing. It's not just a constantly sad movie, but to be able to balance those two things out and to be able to carry it along, and even in the slow scenes, like in the church scene where they're sitting around and talking, and the scene where they're waiting for the tanks to show up, where it's just them sitting there listening to the record player and he's translating the lyrics for them, and it's Ryan and Miller sitting down and talking, that you're still like engrossed in the conversations and interested in what's going on. To me, that really says a lot about the movie and about everybody's commitment into it. And I think this is probably the one time I'm going to say is I'm probably going to give this a 10. Because
I wanted to be the first one to give a 10 to a movie.
Well, man, it just, there wasn't really anything that I didn't like about this movie. There wasn't anything that, like don't get me wrong, like I know it had like hard scenes and heavy scenes and things like that, but I think they just did like such a good job at every single point of the movie, and they hit at every single point of the movie that I like I said, I enjoyed it, and it just, there wasn't anything that I really disliked about this movie, and I really didn't have that many complaints about it. Even with majority of the characters that you do like dying, I mean that the fact is that's the reality of war. Is nobody's safe, and then there's very, very likely happening that the people you don't like make it, and the people you do don't.
All right, well, a 9.5 from me, a 9.75 from Ernie, and our first ever 10 from Dakota averages out to a 9.75. Ernie, I don't think I need to ask, but I will. Where does that put us on our...
That puts Saving Private Ryan at number 1 alone, above a tied Alien and Die Hard.
There you have it. We have a new champion, a new king of the hill. Saving Private Ryan. I don't know if that's going to be beat anytime soon.
I know you're sad because I know you've been wanting to give a 10 to Major League 2.
Don't tempt me. Don't tempt me.
I have no doubt that you're going to probably say that.
I would not do that. I only have 3 movies that I think are a perfect 10. So
I'm going to tell you, I was not expecting to give this a 10, and then I was thinking about it with Suggs, and I was like, am I really about to do this, or do I just need to give it a 9.75?
Are you about to do what I think you're about to do? And I was watching your face, and I was like, I think he's about to do what I think he's about to do.
I just, man, if there was something wrong with it, like if I had found some issue with it, I probably would have stepped it back to a 9.5 or 9.75, but I couldn't. I honestly couldn't.
It was very interesting because I watched it with my daughter, and because she listens to the podcast, she's one of the two that do.
She just listens to it. She listens to it 26 times throughout the week.
Yeah. So I asked her. I said, "Well, what would you rank it?" And she said an 8. She said she liked it. She enjoyed it, but she is like, I guess one thing that Hacksaw Ridge was what her kind of comparison was, where you had a central emotional story throughout the whole entire thing instead of having a bunch of different emotional stretches or branches, because we followed different characters for a little bit.
Yeah.
That's the big complaint that she had about it. I was like, fair enough. I won't disown you just yet.
Yeah. I can see that. I just, I mean, the reality is you're not really going to follow one soldier in this,
Yeah.
especially on a mission like this. You're going to have multiple soldiers. You know, you're going to have a team of 6, 7, or 8 that go on this. So,
Yeah.
not to argue with your daughter when she's not here.
No, that's fine.
Well,
so come on.
That puts us at number 1 on our list. If you would like to see that full rankings list, you can go on our website, podpage.com/classicblockbusters. That's podpage.com/classicblockbusters. You can find our full rankings on there, as well as our episodes and a bunch of other stuff. Ernie does a good job with that, and we appreciate that. We have a Facebook page as well, Blockbusters, a classic movie podcast. We also are on Twitter /X now, or X Twitter, or whatever you want to say it.
It's Twitter. It's always Twitter.
At BlockbusterPod1. We post out our episodes on there, streaming on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube when we remember to put it on there. It is my pick this week, and I pulled a Dakota this week and completely forgot it was my pick. So I've been thinking about it the whole hour. Are we feeling some horror /action, or are we feeling some fantasy /action?
Well, you know what I'll say, but
Dakota,
then you'll end up picking that.
I was asking Dakota. Yeah, you know what?
You want me to call Kamei in here and have her pick for this?
Since Ernie went opposite Ernie this week and picked a blockbuster, I'll pick opposite Caleb and go a cult classic that's probably not going to get a high score, and we're going to do Highlander.
Oh, so we're finally going to find out where the name comes from?
Yes, my gamer tag that I made when I was like 14, Highlander in here.
Oh, Sean Connery with a bad.
I literally made it because I like the TV show a lot more. The TV show is a lot better than the movie, but I liked the movie as well when I was younger. So yes, I made that gamer tag off because I liked the movie and show Highlander. So yes, there you go. But all right, so that'll be our movie next week.
I don't know what to do with you picking a movie that's not it's in the 80s also. Holy cow, Suggs.
I don't know why that,
because you've picked at least 80 movies of any of us.
Yeah,
that's
just a coincidence. So, all right. Anything else? We've run long on this episode. So, anything to add before we?
Hey, if they would have dropped Nino Brown 1 mile away from Hitler, World War II would have been done too.
Stop asking.
I was wondering how you were going to do it. I was really wondering. I thought it was going to be like a drop him on the beach of Normandy, and they wouldn't have had to fight us long. Oh man,
that would have been even better.
All right. Well, we will see you guys next week.
We'll see you.